Okay, welcome to the presentation. My name is James Preston. This presentation is being recorded. Today we are trying something new. That something new is presenting from an iPad mini through a HDMI adapter with an AirPod being used as the microphone so that I didn't need to lug my heavy work laptop all the way over here and be a pain, right? Because I like light and speed and agility and all that other nonsense. I work for a company called AN Security. We are awesome. We are also paranoid as hell. And that's my disclosure that I work for someone that's not exactly one of the Oxford or Cambridge colleges anymore. I used to work for Queen's College. This presentation, as you might be able to tell, is being presented from a GitHub repo. At the end of this presentation, I shall make that repo public, and you all can then go and start hunting for the ever so slightly kind of Doctor Who reference. And if you find the ever so slightly Doctor Who reference, you can have yourself a FIDO2 security key. If you email me saying, can I have a FIDO2 security key? Here's the reference. Thank you, Stan. For those of you who don't want to find the Doctor Who reference in this GitHub repo and ask good questions at the end of the presentation, I have 3 FIDO2 security keys, and I will give you one of them. No, no. I'm the judge of a good question. You're now banned from asking questions. So this presentation runs off from 2 other presentations that I ran last year and the year previous to that as well. So last year, practical steps to help mitigate the risks of zero-day vulnerabilities. And perhaps even more importantly, all of this has happened before, all of this has happened again. Yes, Battlestar Galactica and the MITRE ATT&CK matrix for it. Like I said, this presentation is being recorded. I'll stick it up on YouTube again as soon as the internet gods allow me to upload it and trim it. So the notion is by the end of this presentation, you're going to have a bit of an idea as to how to create a logging policy, because all good security starts with someone saying, you know what, I'm going to write a policy. Yeah. After that, we're going to have a look at the utility of actually doing logging in the first place. You know, what policies are great, but how about we actually look at some real world case studies as to where logging can help us? I've got a short one at the front of the presentation and then 2 more a little bit later on. Identify some useful log sources. So where can we actually get good log data from? Where is like the valuable log data? It's very easy to go and find log data, and people keep coming to me and say, James, I want to log what's going on my network switches. And I say, fantastic. You can see port goes up and port goes down. Yeah. Options on where to obtain and store your logs, but also be ready to log. Now, the broad notion of this presentation is to give you a point in the right direction as to where you can go to go and find more information. So it's not saying this is the only way to do logging that will be useful, but it is have a look at these things. These are things which I know work well. These are things which we've deployed in colleges and universities and with the NHS and other various important, fun and interesting people, and that we know work well. It's all there in GitHub. Like we were talking earlier, if you want to go and say, James, I think there's something better, fantastic, submit a pull request. Submit a pull request. So first, what are other people saying? There's this marvelous organization out in the United States called the Center for Internet Security, otherwise known as CIS. Most of their staff from the founding people of that company were ex-spooks from the NSA and whatever they call their equivalent of other fun and interesting organizations. And they are really smart, like really smart people. They go and publish what they call the CIS controls. One of those controls in 18 core areas is based around effective log management. Control number 8, I've got a link to it here. You can go and read all the things that they suggest you do when it comes to log management. In addition to that, they go and publish benchmarks and configurations. And you've got VMware. Fantastic. Here is how we suggest you go and configure VMware. Here is a couple of 100 pages on how we suggest you configure VMware, and equally so how to configure it for good logging. National Cybersecurity Centre is a good reference as well, and then onto that configuration guidance. So first, let's have a look at their example audit log management policy template. So on their website, linked from this repo, there are a series of different policy templates that they have. They have a series of different controls. So you have a policy template for vulnerability management, a policy template for inventory, and this is a policy template for control number 8, audit log policy. There we go. So this loads up in a Word document, rendered a little bit poorly here on my iPad. But what we can do is see, okay, this is where it links to. This is our control number that it links to, control number 8. Here are the places that we might be able to get logs from, our operating systems, our applications, our firewalls, our web servers, and the like. And this is how we're going to go and handle the life cycle of our logs. We're going to generate logs. We're going to transmit them to a central storage area. We're going to dispose of them responsibly, and perhaps even you might go down this rabbit hole of analyzing those logs and generating alerts from them as well. That's not the purpose of this presentation, but you know what? Look, it's a side quest, something you can go and do alongside of it. These policy templates are really good as I don't know what to do. Can you point me in the right direction? And they really just are. They're on their website. Press download. You don't even have to submit any details. And they'll go and give you the policy templates as here's a good starting point for it. Now, I mentioned those CIS benchmarks. So again, a lot of people come to me and say, hey, James, I want to do logging. Where do I get my logs from? Where's good sources? How do I configure my systems for good logging? And what you'll quite often find is if the vendor is security focused and minded, that they will publish some form of best practice guide on how to go and configure logs for that system. So this first link that I've linked here is actually the Microsoft best practice guide for Active Directory domain services on how to configure audit policy in Active Directory. Which group policies to go and tick, which buttons to go and turn on to get good high quality logs out of Active Directory. Now, if you can't find that for your vendor, this is where we look back to these very smart people back over at the Center for Internet Security again. They go and publish these benchmarks. So one of those benchmarks, for example, from their website is for the Apache web server. They have a 257-page PDF that says, do Apache web server like this and it will probably be okay. Out of that, in section number 6, logging, monitoring, and maintenance, and here are a couple of pages as to how we suggest you go and configure Apache web server for logging. Same for VMware. Same for about 50 different major products, operating systems, applications that you might already be using. Cloud services are in there. On-premise services are in there. Although there's nothing relevant in an iPhone for configuring an iPhone for logging, they do have a guide on how to configure an iPhone for strong security. Center for Internet Security. Really smart people. Give them all your details, everything, and they'll go and send you the amazing PDFs. Even better, you might find that your institution already has a license with them so you can get yourselves registered for it. I happen to know the university has got one. I don't know who manages it, but I know the University of Oxford's got one. So why do I need to log? James, why do I need to do this in the first place, right? This is in the context of security operations predominantly. But usually it's to answer things like questions, right? Answer questions. So Sophos detected something malicious on my computer. Where did it come from? We should be able to then go into the logs and say, yes, the receptionist went and downloaded that from this website here. How many of you right now are super confident that in the event that Sophos went and detected something malicious on your computer, that you would be able to go, yes, Jay, I know you are, and I know your reason for it. You don't need to give away the secrets as to who our customers are, right? But how many of you are super confident that you know exactly which website, what time, how that file got onto their machines? If not, logging's awesome. The same for threat intel reports. So some of you may remember the paper cut vulnerability. I keep coming back to this one because it's a really good one, actually. They produced really high quality data on what the threat actors were up to when they went and compromised a public facing paper cup server. Right? They said, here are the files that they're going to try and get onto that computer. Here's the user account that they're going to try and create. Here's the IP addresses that they're highly likely to connect to you from. Go look for those things in your logs. Yes? And if you have that data, you can go and see, were you impacted by that vulnerability? You can know for reasonable certainty that based on the information available, yes or no, were you impacted? Now, ransomware attacks, they're boring as hell. Come on, ransomware actors, get a little bit more imaginative. Oh, drat, they went and compromised an IP camera to then connect to an SMB server because the IP camera didn't have the EDR agent on. Well, that's imaginative. Well done, those ransomware threat actors. But most of them are as boring as hell because you don't go and configure application control on your machines. If you were to configure application control on your machines and say, here is a list of all the applications that are allowed to execute, ransomware basically gets killed. No way to execute ransomware at that point, with the exception of some command and scripting interpreter things. But should you get one of those attacks, one of the first things that they usually go and do is start stealing all your files so that they can do some good old double extortion. Do you have logs? Yes, I know you do, right? But do you have logs as to investigate, have we actually lost files? You know, they can go and ransomware you off the face of the planet and say, we've got all your files, pay us 20 million Bitcoin or whatever. You can go and find out in your logs if you've got that data available. There are other reasons, right? There are other reasons. Identify root causes of incidents and non-security related boring incidents. I like security stuff. It's entertaining. You get to laugh at the Russians all the time. Sorry, Stan. Yeah, I know. You get to comply with regulations. Regulations. No, right. Seriously, though, compliance and having good cyber hygiene. You know, if you do good cyber hygiene, it's quite easy to go and comply with regulations and things like that. So if you want to go and get your cyber essentials, it's quite easy to go and do that if you just do basic hygiene. And of course, it's genuinely a good idea. Why? Why is it a good idea? Let's go and extract a BBC News article. In that BBC News article, we usually end up seeing things like the unidentified hackers. Well, I hate the term hackers. I prefer threat actor. But unidentified hackers. Well, if they had logs, you'd probably be able to at least get a bit of an idea as to where they came from based on their tactics, techniques, and procedures. You could go and map it to something like MITRE. Well, put a personal information breach, 79,404 people. Quite often they say, well, everyone's data was potentially breached. If you've got good logs, you can say, well, here are the people that were actually breached. You know, it's just a good idea. There are rabbit holes, though. You can go down that rabbit hole of doing lots of really good logging and then thinking, you know what? What I've really got is lots of spare time. Yeah. All of you have got lots of spare time. And if you've got lots of spare time, you can definitely start looking at deception and honeypots, and you can start doing it log review and things like that. They're really cool. They're loads of fun. How many of you have lots of spare time? The purpose of this presentation is to get you the bare basics such that in the event that something goes horribly wrong, you can go to people who do have the spare time and say, hey guys, what do you think of this? And then say, don't worry, you've only lost 99% of your files. The other 1% are safe. Now, I work for a private business. We need to make money, by the way, because I have a border collie. It costs about £300 a month feeding him and giving him medication, looking after him. So to do that, I need to go and mention things that make us money. Microsoft Defender EDR makes us no money. But there are products out there that you can use to go and test and evaluate your systems. One of them is mentioned there. In this system, in this product, you can go and set up simulations that map to the MITRE attack matrix and will do malicious things to your computer for you. Well, isn't that amazing? So in this case, this program is going to go and do data exfiltration over a command and control channel, exfiltration over an alternative protocol, and at the same time, it's going to go and drop a load of remote access software onto your machine and see if it executes. They've got a marvelous list of this, right? Look at all this. Look at all these wonderful remote access tools that can run on your computers. Quite recently doing a threat emulation for a company, which is like a pen test, but it's actually useful. We rocked up and they said, we've got a pretty good cybersecurity maturity here, James. I think we'll be fine. And I said, no problem. So I said, can I have that laptop, please? And they gave me the laptop. And I said, can I have the username and password for the account that we agreed you'd provide me with? And we'll try and do some malicious things. And they said, no problem. And then I emailed myself a link to the AnyDesk remote support tool. There it is. And I said, oh, no, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You know, people do remote support all the time with that. And I say, no problem. And then I immediately copy the entire contents of the user's OneDrive folder into my AnyDesk system, stealing the data through a data exfiltration mechanism that they'd never even considered. Never even considered. They were like, oh yeah, but we've got email data loss prevention, and we've got SharePoint data loss prevention, and we've got data loss prevention configured in other places. And I was like, yeah, well, I just stole all your files through AnyDesk, right? So a thing you can go and test, right? So what about from the defender's point of view? In this example, we have used a marvelous piece of software called Microsoft Defender Endpoint Detection and Response, or EDR. Defender will go and tell you what files were stolen from that computer. Not only will it tell you what files have been stolen from that computer, they will tell you at what time, which user did it, which executable was responsible for it, and the exact file path to that file as well. Now, those of you with developed logging capability will have this data available. But the rest of you, consider, if someone started stealing files off your computer, do you have a detailed log of that? Ooh, look, pause for impact and all that good stuff. Go on, Stan. Right. So, for this example, high value file read. So what we've told Defender is if you see XLSX, PDF, DocX, zips, things like that, and you see them leaving the network through whatever means, go and log them. Now, depending on the quality of the EDR, some of them will keep your logs for 30 days. Defender is definitely one of the better ones. There are other really good ones out there that we will happily sell you, by the way, right? But Defender is one of the very good ones out there, and they keep your logs by default for 30 days. If you want more than 30 days, you can go and ship them into Sentinel for, guess what? Enormous cost. Sorry, Stuart, you were trying to say something there. Okay. Yep. Cool. Cool. Try it. Was that? Can you see the size of my smile? No. Can you see the size of the smile here? Try it. Sophos has, right? University of Oxford, heavy Sophos users, yeah. You get Sophos with Intercept X. I really shouldn't be recording this bit and putting it on YouTube, should I? Oh, no, that's probably public information. It's okay. Sophos have an EDR product. It's not as good as Microsoft's one, but it's definitely up there. And it will tell you all this data. It will log all this data. So what you need to do is go and tell the bigger, more important persons than I at the University of Oxford, or indeed Cambridge, whatever the hell you guys happen to be using these days. I don't know, it's probably what, Clam AV, yeah? Oh, that's a healthy attitude, yeah. The Sophos has this functionality. It's just a one level license tier up one, right? So it's got it to go and give you all that data. What you can then go and do inside these services is then go and write queries to say, this is looking for the file that was exfiltrated, but you can say, okay, was that remote support tool used anywhere else in my network over the last 30 days? Was it seen anywhere else? Was it executed anywhere else? Was it downloaded, but perhaps not run anywhere else on my network? So you're starting to get a good idea here, right? Yeah, this is the capabilities. This is what's out there. So what should I log? I broadly group this into two different categories. Data that will be used in forensic analysis. So something has gone horribly wrong. You've called up incident response and you said, hey guys, we need a hand. We need to fix some stuff here. We need to figure out what's gone wrong. And you can take these high value logs, these high value sets of data and say, go look at those in my logs, please. So new application process is being run. By the way, please configure application control on the machines that can use it. App Locker is built natively into Windows Enterprise these days. It's kind of free at point of use. You might as well use it. DNS requests, URL requests, and other things. Now, you might say, James, that's a marvelous list. Have you got another even better list? And I'll say, yes, of course I do. Linking all the way back to the MITRE attack matrix framework, whatever you want to call it. Here are the known things that threat actors do when they go and compromise networks. Here is an enormous list of how threat actors gain initial access, perform execution, become persistent, evade your defenses, gather credentials, move laterally, perform command and control and data exfiltration. And inside each and every one of these tactics, techniques, and procedures, there is a recommendation as to how you can go and detect the exploit of that. So for example, here in browser extensions, here are the mitigations, here are the things that you can do to stop browser exploits happening in your organization. And by the way, here are the things that you can do to go and detect them. And one of the things I would recommend you go and do is load up the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator, grab a set of highlighters because everyone likes doing arts and crafts, right? Red one, I don't have any ability to detect this at all. Green one, I have a high confidence that I can detect this. Yellow one, guess what? I might be able to do this, yeah? And that can be a fun afternoon for the whole team. Bring your dog, bring your family, get everyone in and fill in the MITRE ATT&CK matrix with your highlighters, yeah? Really good exercise for it. So this is forensic analysis, and this is a general indicator as to what you can do in forensic analysis. Something's gone horribly wrong. We need to figure out how they got in, what they did when they got in, what malicious activities happening. Next up after that, threat hunting. So threat hunting is basically someone goes and publishes a list of indicators of compromise. I've linked a couple of those here. Sophos go and maintain their list on, would you believe it, GitHub. Palo Alto Networks have one there, and so do the National Cybersecurity Center. So here is a list. You'll see loads of these are really old, but some of them are a little bit newer. So for example, here, whatever this is published 7 months ago, here is a list of things that you can look for in your computers to see if you were impacted by this threat. And these lists will include things like file names, file hashes, paths to files. Some of them will go and include command and control domains, URLs, IP addresses. Here's a nice IP address. Go poke that into your network firewall logs. Did anyone try to connect to one of your systems from that IP address? If yes, let's investigate further. If no, oh, you're probably okay. I'm using the word probably here a lot, though. You can see some of these fun and interesting domains that they go and use. If you've got accurate DNS logs, you can go and see, well, did you have a single machine try and call out to that domain? Perhaps some form of command and control domain. Yeah. Now, these get published in the notion that you can then go and say, well, did this threat impact us? Did we get poked and prodded by that threat actor? If yes, let's go doing some further investigation. Now, the third group, which I don't really consider to be like a core part of this presentation, but something that I would really like you to consider. Lots of organizations go and consider really cool security products. Things like Microsoft AppBlocker, which is built into Windows and has existed since the dawn of time in its former name called Software Restriction Policies, and is really easy to configure. Really shiny product there, free at point of use. And organizations will go and configure those to allow the applications which they've allowed and block everything else. And then they leave it at that. Well, you've got a nice rich source of data there for abnormal activities inside your organization. If AppBlocker goes and blocks the execution of an application, well, let's go and investigate why that launched in the first place. Was it Microsoft trying to install Copilot on all your machines again? Or was it a threat actor who's just been successful in convincing a user to go and download a remote access toolkit onto a machine and has just tried to convince them to double click on it to get it running? Prime opportunities for you to go and investigate. There are loads of other things that you might be able to do. Like I say, though, be wary of that rabbit hole. You could spend all your days doing interesting things with logs and none of the stuff like, I don't know, whatever you guys do these days, or AV presentations, watching those, for instance. That was a good presentation, wasn't it? If you need more inspiration, Sigma HQ, the Sigma rule set. This is a really good GitHub resource again, which describes how to detect abnormalities in your organizations. It gives you loads of rules that you can import into log management systems that say, if you see this, consider it abnormal. And you can use that for a little bit more inspiration. Now, log retention, this is an interesting one. So like I was saying earlier, Microsoft Defender EDR stores your logs for 30 days, I think it is, locally. in their cloud service. It might be a little bit longer than that, in fact. After that, if you want to store them for longer, fantastic, ship them into their expensive cloud logging service. I would recommend, and not just James from Mayan Security, but also the Center for Internet Security, loads of really smart people, 90 days. That should be the absolute minimum for the length that you go and retain your logs, 90 days. However, you will continue to hear about threat actors dwelling in an organization for a long period of time. What we used to see is threat actors up to 6 months just hanging about, chilling, looking for new things that they can go and compromise. Some threat actor groups, though, are legitimately rock up, smack you in the face, steal your wallet, steal all your data and run away, and they'll do that all in a day or two. So we are in this interesting environment where some threat actors are very quick and some will dwell for a long time. If you can store your logs all the way up to 365 days or perhaps even longer for high value logs, logs which provide really good, really rich data as defined in organizations like the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. So next up, how do I capture logs? How do I get hold of logs in the first place? It will depend on your systems. I've considered a couple here. Microsoft Windows. The Sysmon agent linked here is a source of high quality logs for Windows computers. It will log DNS traffic. It will log the execution of applications. It will log the loading of drivers. You can configure it to log detections of high value files being opened, for instance, as well with the right configurations. Put it everywhere. Absolutely everywhere, not just your servers, not just your web servers. Stick it on every single computer that you have access to. Sysmon is high quality data. Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Go on. Addressed a little bit later in the presentation, don't worry. What I would broadly say is your first opportunity to log things is locally on the machine. Your second opportunity is then to stick them in a centralized service. We'll come on to that in just a minute, though. Minimum log retention, like Windows out of the box, comes with like 100 megabytes worth of logging space allocated. On a domain control, that'll get you about 6 seconds of logs. On a modern client, you get a couple of hours maybe. Last I tried, the maximum limit for Windows for live logs, so that's logs which are displayed in Event Viewer, you can put that up to about 2 gigabytes for the security logs, application and system logs. You can also configure it to log locally to the disk. Just be wary of doing that because you start ending up in a situation where all your computer's storage space is used up with logs instead of cat pictures, and it's not a very good thing for a computer, right? To get logs out of the Windows systems, 2 agents that we've had a lot of success with, NX Log Community Edition, a really nice, simple kind of ini file style config with a little bit of XML inside there. Really easy to get that to import logs or export logs into a logging service, centralized or otherwise. WinLogBeat is another option as well. Those logs might come direct out of the Windows event log system or indeed out of the file system as well. So for instance, if you've got a Microsoft IIS server running the web service for it, those logs will get logged either into an SQL database if you've configured it, or perhaps much more likely straight into flat text files for it. Linux, I'm not a Linux admin, as most of you will know, and so every time I look at Linux, I start getting a little bit odd. But it's everywhere, of course. It's probably running on this iPad, isn't it? You know what? Our syslog still seems to be the best way of getting logs out of Linux systems. By all means, if you think there is a better way, submit a pull request, and I'll go and approve it. Sysmon for Linux as well, yeah. Yeah. Again, yeah, yeah. Really good agents for it. Again, they're kernel logs, IM kernel, IM journal. Just look for configuration files, look at the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. There's loads of really good configurations out there for it. And again, if your thing's got like Apache web servers as well, for instance, flat text files, you can get our syslog to go and just forward those flat text files into other systems as well for it. For network appliances and infrastructure, You are almost certain to bump into what's known as CEF, or the Common Event Format. This is semi-standardized by an organization called ArcSight. FortiGate firewalls, you run a command in the CLI. Palo Alto Networks firewalls, some kind guy called James went and published a log format in GitHub, which is available publicly and accessible behind this link here, to go and get Palo Alto Networks firewalls to go and log in the CEF format. Sonic Wall firewalls, I bump into them a fair bit still in Oxford. Sonic Wall, again, it's just a tick box. Use the CEF format for those kind of network appliances and infrastructure for it. Cloud services. Cloud services are predominantly, to get logs out of those, you need to kind of call into an API service, get the logs to be sucked down from them. Sophos have a seam integration script. Guess what? That seam integration script can go and kick out logs in the common event format, the CEF format. You'll see that all over the place. A product which I've listed here called Lima Charlie, which is something which we don't sell because we don't make any money if we were to sell it. You could literally go to their website with a credit card and go and sign up for it. They've got a load of native connectors to cloud services, including Sophos in there, but to other services like Okta and Duo, for instance, Enter ID and all those kind of things. You just point them at that service and it'll start sucking down the logs. Quite often with computers which are on-premise, computers that you go and maintain yourselves, it's more a case of you push those logs into a logging system. With cloud services, quite often, but not always, it's more a matter of pulling them down from the cloud service into your own log management system. So where should those logs go? A couple of different places. Local storage is the first and easy option. So like you said there, for your systems which go offline, get them to log locally. The NX log agent, for instance, keeps a timestamp as to when it last saw its centralized logging service. And in the time that it kind of says, well, this is the last time I saw it, and this is the time now, here are all the logs in the differential of that. When it next sees its logging service, it will just go and push those logs into the log service for it. So it kind of stores them up and will then ship them into your centralized storage after that. Centralized storage, there are so many different options in this space. Most of them, if you start peeling away the layers, one of those being a product called Security Onion, would you believe it, is based on something either like Elasticsearch or OpenSearch. OpenSearch is a fork of Elasticsearch after Elasticsearch went and changed their licensing. Internally, we use a fair amount of Graylog, the open source product for that. I know there's a fair amount of Wazoo, Wazar, whatever the hell they call it these days out there, and that's got some other features and products built into it as well. Just a centralized logging service for it. We'll come on to what that service might look like in a little bit more detail in just a minute or two as well. For systems which are end user devices which are working remotely, again, consider some form of cloud relay as well. So what you might go and configure there, for instance, is your logging agent, if it can't see an internal logging system, push them to a cloud logging system, which in turn might have some form of tunnel back into your on-premise system to say, hey, look, you're on the public internet right now, ship them to me instead, and I'll forward them into the system on your behalf for it. After that, go on, Stan. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. It will depend on your bandwidth, really, I think is the usual way of doing it, and where your administrators are that are actually going to be reviewing those logs. I mean, if those administrators are distributed as well, then it doesn't really matter where the centralized log system is. And if you've got massive bandwidth between all your different sites, then so long as those links stay up, you could send them to a centralized logging service all day and not have to proxy them through somewhere else. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, store it locally so you can cut it off from the cloud. And yeah, it just depends on how you consider, the design of those systems, to be honest, which isn't a very good answer, is it? But you can configure a multi-tiered infrastructure for it as well. And you can have like a grand collector at the very top of it, and then collectors in each data center, and it forwards them up to a central system while storing them locally as well. I mean, the thing for logs, and I get to it later in this presentation as well, For that kind of scale, storage gets very expensive very quickly. But for the scale of kind of colleges and departments, 8 terabyte SSDs are dirt cheap these days. Just throw a couple of SSDs in a box and you'll be okay. Yeah. 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 A couple of terabytes of storage for the logs that you'll need is cheap. Yeah. But moving on there, chaps, what I suggest you do after kind of getting back to your organizations is going and have a look at Velociraptor. If you don't already have a centralized logging system and you have some form of cybersecurity incident, a really quick and dirty way to get logs off your systems, in particular end user devices and servers, is a service called Velociraptor. Really easy agent to go and deploy. It kind of has its own command and control infrastructure, and it's a really good way to just suck logs out of a system really quickly if they're stored locally for it. We don't. Oh no, what's that? Yes, we do. We do sell Rapid7 now. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's loads of logging products out there for it. So moving on from there, consider authentication and encryption, in particular if your logs are transiting a public network or an untrusted network for it. These days, it is very easy to go and set up encrypted channels between end user devices, servers, and your logging infrastructure. But what you might find is that infrastructure, things like firewalls, is a bit more of a challenge. If those firewalls transit their logs over some kind of public network, some kind of public infrastructure, I would really recommend go and get that encryption set up for it as well. And equally so, if you have some form of cloud logging system, make sure that you've got some form of authentication for the end user clients for that, so that a threat actor can't just start connecting to your logging system and feeding data into it. We have seen instances where organizations have gone and poorly configured their cloud logging systems, and a threat actor has gone and compromised that organization just by shipping massive volumes of log data into that organization, crashing out the logging system, and then going and compromising the organization through an alternative route there for it. If storing your logs on premise, when you go and build your logging servers, I would really recommend make them physical servers, right? Some old computers or older computers with an 8 terabyte SSD inside them, stick them in their own dedicated network, have the authentication for that system hosted exclusively on that log management system, and have a very few number of firewall rules allowing connections into them. Again, threat actors will attempt to go and identify logging systems such that they can include them in their ransomware attack. And that way you end up in a situation where not only are your systems ransomwared, but the system that might be able to tell you how you got ransomwared has also been ransomwared itself. Protect those logs as good as you would a backup and recovery system. Dedicated networks, dedicated firewall rules, make them physical systems instead of sitting on your VMware stack. Because when your VMware stack gets compromised, the last thing you want to go and do is say, well, there go my logs. Yeah. If on premise, like I was mentioning here, dedicated network, dedicated firewall, dedicated physical server. And what I would really recommend here, 3 smaller nodes in a cluster, 3 small logging systems in a cluster is a better design than a single node by itself. I know I've deployed plenty of single nodes out there, but if you are going down that route of having a highly available logging system, 3 nodes in a cluster with a load balancer in front of them is a much better design again for it. Now, volume versus value is a really good example of how long we're going to store our data for. Firewall traffic logs are very high volume, but to be honest, relatively low value, especially if you don't do decryption. The same applies to DNS. High volume, low to medium relative value here. But if your DNS traffic's encrypted because you're not decrypting through your firewall yet, like you should be since, I don't know, 2010 perhaps, that data is perhaps quite low value in the grand scheme of things. However, things like command line audit logs If a threat actor can't get past app blocker, the next thing they try and do is go and launch PowerShell and start doing malicious things in PowerShell. Well, let's log the PowerShell logs. That's now relatively high volume data. And equally see, if you've got an application that's never been seen before launched, low volume, but very, very high value data. Store that data for years if you can. That could truly just be a couple of megabytes in your log management system, whilst your firewall traffic logs in a typical Oxford college to store about a year's worth of logs easily hits 3 to 4 terabytes. And that's after pruning the fields down as well. That's after taking out all the junk. 3 to 4 terabytes for a typical Oxford college is what we see. So sharing your logs, in the event of an incident, at some point, it's quite likely that you need to be able to say, well, here are my logs, go read them. But of course, you're sitting there with 8 terabytes of logs. This is where SneakerNet comes back in. It is faster sometimes to pick up the server and walk it over to the incident responders and say, here you go, guys, have a look. For this, consider, do you have the opportunity to do some kind of bulk file transfer system? It's not uncommon that if you have a good, well-configured log management system, that you might provide incident responders some form of read-only access. A lot of these Elasticsearch OpenSearch systems are storing their logs in what can be exported to JSON documents. I have seen some organizations just try to do bulk dumps of JSON data, and they end up with files in the terabytes, even though their logs might be in the only gigabytes. OpenSearch, of course, is very good at storing those. So let's get into some more examples. Demo 2, malware detection triggers an investigation. Windows Defender goes and detects something malicious running on your computer, and it blocks it. Well done, Defender. How did that file get onto our computer? How did this memory dumping system get onto our computer? Well, guess what? James put it there. How can we prove that James put it there? Well, first, using the Lima Charlie EDR this time, so first time around we looked at Microsoft, let's skip to another product here instead. They go and provide you with this detailed log as to every execution of the applications on your systems. The thing that I really like about Lima Charlie is they will store your logs for a year. Microsoft 30 days to 90 days, Lima Charlie is a year. So here's the application being executed. Now, above this, we have a go to parent option. What application spawned that application? What application triggered the execution of it? Well, guess what? It was the validator executor. Sounds like something James might sell. And in fact, if we drill into that further and look at the next parent for it, we can see the service host launch that application. So it's a Windows service that's being configured on that computer. If we go up the next level from there, we can see that Windows Services and Windows Init launched it. So it was launched courtesy of Windows starting the services process itself. And that Windows NT Authority system was the ultimate executor of that. And these systems will go and paint you a nice little kind of diagram to say, well, here is the malicious document being loaded onto the computer. Here is the process that went and loaded it for you. And here is the process that went and loaded that one. So you get a nice timeline of events as those applications get loaded into your computers. Final demo, web shell party mode. In this case, your anti-malware agent has gone and detected a web shell has been uploaded onto one of your web servers. Web shells are massive fun, loads of fun you can have with those. In this situation, VirusTotal has got a couple of little detections for it. This is a web shell that I just downloaded off GitHub and uploaded into an kind of unsurprising web server that I was controlling myself. So what does the threat actor get to see when they run this web shell? WordPress.sailtheseas.co.uk. If you ever see a machine reaching out to sailtheseas.co.uk on one of your domains, guess what? That was me doing a threat emulation. And at the end of this presentation, that domain is just 3 days away from expiring in my GoDaddy account and will be deleted. So in this web shell, I've then gone and uploaded a coin miner into that computer. And my next step is to go and execute that coin miner. What do you see as the defender? So in Lima Charlie, where we've got our high quality logs, we can see this command line event here. ifconfig was run. That was the first command that you saw in that example there. I can see that it was started in the Apache 2 path, with www data being the user that went and executed that in the first place. I can see the network connections of both my system and the remote attacker. And then finally, I can see that coin miner being loaded as well. I can see the command line process being loaded for that as well for it. Some other cool things you can do with logs. Vulnerability management systems. If you've got Tenable Nessus or something like that, you can dump those logs into a CSV and you can go and see which products are ailing you. The one after this that I really like is, guess which day that is? Christmas. Auth fail. This was our honeypot server. Christmas Day, in excess of 2 million probes against our honeypot server on Christmas Day for a VPN system. You can go and look at pretty things like that in your logs. Sophos. Sophos in Oxford sucks because the university hasn't properly configured the email alerts for Sophos. You can fix that by setting up a Greylog server or any log server using the Sophos Seam integration script, getting those logs poked into your computers or from your computers into your log management system there and getting your log management system to go and send you the emails that the university should be sending for you. So finally, when you get back to your institutions, get a formal log policy sorted. Logging is not a thing to go and say, you know what, James, I'm going to configure a log server today and it's going to be awesome. No. Speak with senior leadership, get buy-in, download that policy, write something that looks good, and then go and do it. Find 1 or 3 servers, old desktop computers, something that works, stick some 8 terabyte SSDs inside there for about £500 a go from Amazon, and start doing some logging. Have a look at a good EDR service. They make it so much easier. Lima Charlie is the one that I'd recommend you have a look at. If I said for £3 a month per computer that you could have the quality of logs like that, do you think that's worth it? Maybe. What if I said that once you take $3 a month, because that's actually how much it costs, and convert that into pounds, it's something like £2.80 a month. Sounds like a pretty good deal for a 1 year's worth of log storage of every application, every command line that executed on that computer. Finally, I'm AIM from AN Security. We need to make money. We need to make money. We have an event. It's about web application firewalls. Web application firewalls are awesome because you can do Let's Encrypt. And you can Let's Encrypt protect any system while still doing decryption through your firewall to go and detect people uploading their web shells. And if you want to talk to us, jpreston@ansecurity.com. Thank you all. My time is apparently up.